Now let's get into our next discussion now. Child pornography is a problem of international proportion. It has also emerged as one of the fastest growing online business with nearly $3 billion annual revenue. Despite the notable efforts of many nations, child pornography remains a serious issue. Recently, operatives of the Nigeria Police Interpol National Central Bureau arrested 2 suspects for allegedly engaging in international child pornography in Kano. Now, according to the force public relations officer, Frank Mba, the suspects are accused of taking advantage of underage girls whom they sexually abused, made video recordings of their acts, and shared on an international social media WhatsApp group, a chat owned and managed by a Brazilian. Now, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which has been ratified by an overwhelming majority of the nations of the world, identifies child pornography as a violation against children and requires that nations who are parties to the convention take measures to prevent the exploitation, the use of children in pornographic materials. So this forms part of our discussion right now this morning. And I have with me in the studio Dikbo Oyewole, strategy consultant and social commentator. Nice to have you join me right now.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you. Right. I also have from Bonny Island, Port Harcourt, gender advocate and social commentator, Tessie Biobaku. Tessie, good morning and Happy New Year.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on board. Happy New Year as well.
Great. Great to have you. Now, let's start from the studio. Dikbo, the issue of child pornography has become a very great challenge, I must say. And the advocacy against it, trying to create enlightenment, to create awareness, has been on for so many years. Whether that is having impact or not is a totally different ballgame altogether. But the numbers from the statistics we're getting is increasing by the day. Why are we having this?
Firstly, I'd like to say it's a very sad situation, knowing that children, I mean, they're the most vulnerable part of society, are being preyed upon by predators and all sorts of pervert fellows. But like you said, it's been on the rise every other year, and it keeps increasing, and it keeps becoming more profitable, because somehow, despite the measures put in place by various international agencies, somehow they still find a way to get things done. Before we came on air, I was sharing with you that now certain folks are pushing for pedophilia to be a sexual orientation. So for me, that tells us that there's a lot of urgency that needs to go into tackling this problem: child abuse, child pornography, and basically anything that endangers and ensures that certain people can prey on the child. Once we are able to, or once they are able to have pedophilia being tagged as a sexual orientation, don't be surprised where it then gets to incest being a sexual orientation. So then you have a father who gets to abuse
and then
his daughters.
He just complicates the whole thing.
It complicates the whole thing. So that's why, for me, in the last couple of years, since I actually watched it, it was a TED Talk where someone was actually saying that, yes, it is a sexual orientation, and that conversation has been on for some time now. I've been having this conversation with certain people saying that there is an urgency to ensure that the child, either a girl or a boy, that they are urgently protected, and there are sterner measures to ensure that they aren't taken advantage of and they aren't preyed on by the predators of society.
All right, Tessie, let me come to you on this. You have been an advocate for the girl child for a long time. Talking about the implications of this, because the numbers are here with us. Just sometimes we feel and think that pornography and as the way it runs is not a Nigerian thing, but we see that on a daily basis. A lot of Nigerians, we've had cases and reports of these incidents within the country. What is the long-term implication of this on our society?
It's really a sad thing. The long-term implication is so much. You don't even want to look at that. I think the best thing right now, this is a situation that, the concern now is as if we've waited for long. It's not as if we've been oblivious of this, but, there's that thing about we just feel we wish it away. We don't see it as a serious concern. And But unfortunately, especially with regards to the COVID situation, a lot of things that naturally we take for granted has been escalated, and the exposure with regards to it, of course, has become a great concern. Exposing the girl child, the boy child, to a situation where they don't feel safe, they don't feel protected, is one that will not make the country itself to try, because in a lot of ways, if children feel that they are not safe in whatever way, there's no way you can engage them in things like them being empowered in terms of their education and every other thing. I know an empowered society in terms of education, in terms of being informed, is something that would make our society a better place for one to live in and all that. So there is really need for this situation to really be taken care of. I must applaud the police in busting this syndicate, but then there is a lot to do. We need to look at the root causes of this. If
All
we,
right.
if we can't tackle the root causes, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask both of you when it comes. Well, let's take it from the family perspective when it comes to the roles the family is supposed to play. Now, but I'll start with you, Tessie. When it comes to when you mention a child, you will know that the family is close by somewhere originally, because
Yeah,
every
absolutely, yeah.
every child is a product. In fact, it's still being nurtured, or is set to, or is supposed to be nurtured by a family. Now, when we have children being exposed to pornography and all of these kind of abuses here and there, how has the family failed to have that kind of situation even occur in the first place? Or what responsibilities are the family supposed to take that they are not taking, that this is happening?
I think we need to, we have this thing about our culture that it's as if there's this stigmatization with regards to sexual education. We tend to shy away from it. We see it as probably like a taboo or something. And there's need for us now to take that responsibility. There's also need for us to go beyond, because of poverty. You expose your children to what they are not supposed to be exposed to. And we need to try in every way as parents, to be deliberate, to look out for our children. And again, I mean, with what is happening now, we need to have a support structure. I was earlier, I was trying to say communal efforts is very important, because, for the perpetrators of this act, there are people that we see around us. There are people that one way or the other, we might know them. But, we look at it that, okay, maybe it's a way of trying to, maybe somebody is trying to survive or something. We must break the silent culture. It's not about when you see something suspicious, you now say, okay, let me keep quiet about it. When something is not right, is that you say something about it, you do something about it, act on it. It's very important. Yes, we might need the collaboration, and synergy with the government and the organization. But first thing first, it starts from the family. It starts with we looking out and getting our children well informed, letting them know that, look, there are places that maybe you don't need to go alone, maybe time that you don't need to go out. Then being empowered to be informed, to know that, look, this thing is not right. And of course, let people volunteer, let there be mentorship with regards to this concern, because it's a very serious one. I mean, most you see that most times people that are caught up with this, even though it's not an excuse, probably they've been molested one way or the other. But then it's not an excuse that they should get into such acts, because it's very, very sad and it's so wrong.
All right, now, Dikwa, still on the family, would you say the family is failing? That is why we have this increasing number of child pornography and abuses here and there, or would you say society trends are responsible for this?
Well, we also need to understand that for every societal trend we see, it is either a failure or the success from the family, because family is a fundamental unit of the society. But that being said, I'd like to take it from a point that she mentioned about poverty. I remember in 2019, right on your program, we talked about human trafficking. And by the United Nations index, there were certain factors that were responsible in a lot of nations where that happened. Poverty was at the top of the list. So yes, also I remember that we talked about poverty playing a huge role because, I mean, you have someone somewhere and then for some reason they have maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 children and they can't send all of them to school and then they have to send one of them maybe to Lagos to live with a relative and then the child gets abused. So that is part of the problem. Saying that even at home, because COVID, for example, last year during the first lockdown, we heard several stories where a lot of abuse was on the rise. And we didn't realize that for some children, even going to school was an escape for them. For them to go to school, maybe to go to after school lessons and all of those activities was a means of escape for them. For some women as well, it was a means of escape for them. Now, during the lockdown, everybody was at home, the abuser and the abused, and it was quite traumatic for a lot of people's mental health. So yes, on some level, a lot of families have failed this test, saying that to ensure that they are keeping the children safe, because we have several cases where even right there in the house, where we have fathers abusing their daughters and their sons, I mean, just at the domestic level, let alone talking about you trafficking them out or you taking videos and sending it to people right there in the home. We're having those issues happening, and then they are not being reported adequately. There was a video that I saw, I believe, 2 days ago on social media, where a young lady, a 20-year-old, said that her father, I think he was a professor in a university or a polytechnic, that he had been abusing her since when she was young. And then he was picked up, and then he ended up saying, oh, he hasn't been abusing her for years. He only raped her once. And she was asked, where was her mother? And she said her mother was well aware of the situation, that whenever she refused her father, he would send her out of the house. She'll sleep outside overnight, and then her mother won't even bother to say, where's my daughter? Where is she sleeping? Why is she sleeping outside? This culture of silence has gone on for too long. So we need to have this conversation around this culture of silence, that people need to speak up, not just immediate family members, but also neighbors.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, I like to mind my business. I don't want them to say that I'm the one that did it. But you should also understand that we're also members of a particular society, because when that particular child is broken, they end up becoming broken adults.
Exactly.
And then they end up harming your own children.
Of course. So we are all implicated one way or the other. Because when you talk about kidnapping or armed robbery and all of that, it is a failure from one end, that makes other people become victims and all of that. Now, let's talk about the issue of sex education, Tessie. You said something close to this earlier, where some of these things are seen as taboo in some places where parents don't like to talk about these things with their children, and whether male or female, they feel these things are, maybe sometimes they're shy of it, or maybe they feel maybe due to cultures and all of that. But how intentional can we be, or should we be, when it comes to sex education?
I remembered one of my antenatal when I was pregnant, and I needed to clarify something from the nurse, and it was basically with regards to sex. And I noticed some of the women there were like, "Why would you discuss that?" And I'm like, "Why are we here in the first place? What got us pregnant to be here?" So
I like that.
I mean, it's like looking for a virgin in the maternity ward. We need to change the narrative. We need to come to reality. I mean, in a situation, the society we live right now is the technology with regards to is not something you can't say you want to push away or say, okay, it's not there. The accessibility of these children to the internet is not something that you can say, I would stop them or whatever. So it now boils down to you understanding that they need to be well informed. They need to understand that there will be certain things that, they might come across, see, and that shouldn't be, like right now, there's a trend going on. I mean, like what he just said, a father that raped the child, I mean, feels justified that, I mean, it's only just once. So you see a situation where even the children at home, they're supposed to have that protection, are not even having it. And again, the silent culture, like, we're talking about right now. I mean, that girl was bold enough to come out and say, look, this is happening to me. And I mean, I need that justice. There was that case of an uncle that was the way he was kissing the girl child, and the mother was like, after all, is the uncle. And, I know that boy was maybe an undergraduate of a school. I mean, and that brings me to the consequences. When people understand, when people say that, okay, I couldn't help myself, but sometimes in your mind, maybe you're on the road and you feel like, okay, your spirit tells you, get into the road, just let that car run you over. You don't get into it. So why wouldn't you hold yourself? But you see, there's that excuse because the consequences are not there. These people are not paying for it. It looks as if what should be abnormal, the society has made it to become as if it's normal. And that's why you see, it becomes frustrating, and in terms of child pornography, prostitution, the sad part of it with regards to having this syndicate involved is the globalization. It now it becomes a bit complicated because you have, international, whatever, people, like you rightly said earlier, the Brazilian connection in this. But then if we bring it back home, where our children are well informed, we tell them to speak out. We tell them to understand the consequences, the negativity that comes with it. Because another thing, even if, yes, the perpetrators will be sent to jail and all that, you've destroyed the life of that child. You've destroyed everything. It might be a 10-second thing, it can be a 10 minutes thing, but you've actually, destroyed the life of that girl child or even the boy child. So this is something that we can't take lightly again. Every one of us, communal efforts together, more voices, we'll see how we're not going to say it's going to be eradicated completely, just like that. But to an extent, to reduce this, with the rules, the laws that are in place that needs to be enforced, doesn't need to be taken for granted. It's not something that there's that complacency. We're being complicit with this thing. Because to an extent, we're caught up with this, we're each other's keeper, forgive, forget, and all that. We must go beyond that. What is wrong, and it has to be dealt with.
Okay. We'll come to that aspect of things where when a prosecution is supposed to take place, especially when it involves community members, like you mentioned an uncle earlier, there is this intervention here and there as to, it's a family matter, let it be settled and let us move on. We are either good Muslims or we're good Christians. Let us forgive and forget. Those elements come in, but we'll talk about that. Dikmo, let's go to the issue of internet and social media. How has this compounded the issue? Because it seemed to be the ready-made vehicle or platform by which some of these things thrive. Because certainly you won't see this on any TV station anywhere in the world.
Yes, so like every tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for evil. So yes, social media has been a useful tool, if I may use that, in the hand of these, I'll call them perverts, really. Unfortunately, how they go about it is something that is still quite alien to a lot of us. There's what they call the dark web, that a lot of us here don't even have access to. I don't even know how to get there. But people that go on there know how they get on there. They know what they go there for. So, and shutting that part of the internet down, I believe it's a bit complicated. But yes, I would advocate for international authorities to see how they can keep policing that part of the web. Like some of them have been doing abroad, seeing how they could curb arms, ammunition sales, drugs, and all of that. So yes, I would like to beseech them that this be at the top of their list to see how they get to hunt them down and cleanse the internet of that kind of depravity. Because, like you said, it is a ready-made platform and it is accessible to all if you know how to get there. So the question now is, how do we then get to getting knocked off that platform? It is by holding and catching the perpetrators and seeing that they get prosecuted and seeing that the victims do get justice.
All right. Now, Tessie, the role of religion, on one hand, where there are laws, there are rules, or there are commandments, if I have to put it that way, but when you violate those commandments, religion still tells you that there's room for forgiveness and all of that. Some people have said this has compounded the situation where everybody claims that because we are Christians or because we are good Muslims or because we are good religious people, some of these things, let's not take it to court. We can settle this out of court and then let us forgive each other and ensure we don't go ahead again. The Creator has forgiven and moved on. How should we handle this contradictory balance where we're caught in between as to our commitment to society, our commitment to religion, one way or the other?
I think it boils down to commitment to reality. If as a Muslim or as a Christian, you already know the word that you're not supposed to commit this act, then there is no need for you to think that you can be easily just, forgiven. And yes, forgiving, but you must face the consequence. There's no shortcut to it. You must face the consequence, because at the end of it all, it's not going to take away what's the pain, the future of that child that you have destroyed within just 5 minutes or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. No, I mean, because if we look at things and say, okay, let's look at the religious aspects, let's look at the family-oriented togetherness. It comes to, where were you? I mean, what was your thoughts when you were doing this? Did you think about it? So I still think the government really needs to see how the laws regards to child molestation, child prostitution, child pornography needs to be enforced. If these laws are enforced, then to an extent, I know that this situation would be taken care of.
All right.
Like I said, it might not be completely eradicated, but to an extent, we can have it reduced.
Okay.
And one thing is very key. We need to break the culture of silence. That's so important.
Totally agree. I agree with you, Tessie Bilbaku. Thank you so much. The state has a role to play here, but the people themselves have the primary role of speaking out. Speak out first, and then anything is possible. Thank you very much, Tessie Bilbaku, for joining us.
Is very important.
Thank you so much, Tessie, for joining us on this program. Dikbo Iwale, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Great.
Thanks for having me on board.
Thank you. Thank you.